Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to all of you, and a warm welcome to today's webinar entitled TrueNAT SARS-CoV-2 Overcoming Implementation Challenges for the Greater Impact. The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in severe disruption, and test, trace, and treat is the best possible solution we have until an effective treatment regime or protective vaccine is developed. Given the sudden need of the large scale of testing, available TrueNAT machines in the country testing infrastructure played a very important role in rapid availability of the test. Today, we shall have understanding of the solutions from TrueNAT-based COVID-19 testing and how we shall be overcoming some challenges what we face in our day-to-day lab activities for maintaining the integrity of the results, because that is the paramount point we are looking for. Today, we have Dr. Anusha Rohit, who is an MD and PhD in microbiology and have in-depth experience in medical research and testing. She is head of the department at Madras Medical Mission, Chennai, for the Department of Microbiology. Dr. Anusha has multiple international and national publications for the repute and awarded of multiple fellowship. She was international ambassador for year 2017 for the Society of Healthcare Epidemiology of America. It was endeavored to her for the commitment towards the advancing healthcare technology in the epidemiology, infection prevention, and other goals of she in India and associated regions. Dr. Anusha shall be sharing her experience on COVID-19 testing on the TrueNAT platform with more focus on result interpretation and troubleshooting. Today, we also have Dr. Shivraj Bhote with us, who is Manager Technical Services at Malbhai Diagnostic Private Limited. He is part of the global technical support of the COVID-19 test and have thorough understanding of TrueNAT system and COVID-19 testing. Dr. Shivraj shall be starting the session with detailed insight on TrueNAT instrument, assay, maintenance, and addressing errors, what we see when we have some problems in the experiment and assay. He will also be addressing some of the key challenges with lab phases and how to resolve them. Dear viewers, please type your questions in Q&A tab. The speaker shall be answering at the end of the session or during the session as and when they will be free to type it out. Also, we shall be recording the webinar and posting it on our website for the ready access. So we will be giving the link maybe in coming week, early next week, so that you can access and as and when you are free to go through it. I'm sure it's going to be a great learning experience for all of us. I request Dr. Shivraj to kindly start the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Prashant, for that introduction. I hope I'm audible to all of you. And we'll start with the session regarding the TrueNAT SARS-CoV-2, overcoming the implementation challenges for the greater impact. So, as you know, this for long, the molecular diagnostics has been the main domain of large central laboratories requiring the patients and samples to travel long distances for a test to be conducted. Now, these poses several logistical and technical challenges leading to increased costs and delayed results. The diversity of such results and impact of such intervention in treatment outcome have always been questionable. Now, this has led to a poor uptake of such reliable and cutting-edge technologies that have potential to save millions of lives, mitigate sufferings, and reduce disease burden and antimicrobial resistance. The lack of timely access to these good diagnostics has been the bane of healthcare needs, particularly of the low and middle income countries such as India. So we bring to you the TrueLab real-time quantitative micro PCR system from MolBio Diagnostics, which is a cutting-edge technology right to the point of care at all the laboratories and non-laboratory settings, such as primary healthcare centers, then community healthcare centers, in the field near patient, essentially at all levels of the healthcare, thereby decentralizing and democratizing the access to the molecular diagnostics. And with a large, growing menu of the assays for the infectious diseases, this rapid portable technology, uh, enables early and accurate diagnostics and initiation of a correct treatment, for that matter, at the first point of contact itself. The platform is infrastructure dependent and provides complete the end-to-end solution for disease diagnosis with proven ability to work at a primary healthcare centers and with wireless data transfer capability. And this is a completely game-changing technology which brings in a paradigm shift to a global fight against control and management of devastating infectious diseases. As you can see on my screen, this TrueLab Quantitative Micro PCR workstation actually comes with a set of all these things. So it includes a True Prep Auto system, which we call it as the extraction system, where which the extraction of the DNA and RNA or total nucleic acids is carried out. Whereas the another machine comprises of a TrueLab analyzer, so it goes in tandem. So whatever the extracted nucleic acids can be ran on a TrueLab analyzer with the help of a TrueNat chips, so which we are going to discuss in a more detail later on. And we have these three variants of a TrueLab system, which differs in the throughput, such as the UnoDX, TrueLab Duo, and the TrueLab Quattro. And there are some accessories such as the cartridge stand, TruePrep 6 microliter micropipette, microtube stand, pipette stand, and we also give along with the TrueLab micro PCR printer. So this comes in as a whole case where the workstation can be carried out, as you have seen in my previous slide, that it can be carried to any remote locations in a suitcase itself. So it's like a lab on a chip technology. So we have these three variants and three options. So if you see the first option, UnoDX, can perform around 10 to 12 tests per day, that is 8-hour shift, whereas the Duo and the Quattro system can perform around 24 to 48 tests per 8-hour shift. And if you see the option 3 of a Quattro, we are giving this system along with the two extraction devices. So that works in a tandem for the 48 sample load. So this acts as a complete solution, and COVID is not the only sample which we are working on this device. It actually has a much more greater sample area, or various samples can be extracted on these, such as urine, sputum, saliva, even the swab samples, CSF, blood, plasma, serum, and a lot of extrapulmonary samples, stool samples also can be tested for the TB diseases. So this acts as a complete solution for the nucleic acid extraction, and this is also sold in as a standalone unit for the extraction needs, because most of the labs nowadays they have a solution, they have a PCR, but they have to do the manual extraction. So this is one advantage to it. Coming to the next slide, if you can see all the devices which we have showcased, they are very portable. So in labs nowadays, they are very congested, and it is very difficult to place in the new devices, because we have seen so many PCRs which are huge in size. So it is very difficult to place them in the lab. So this is very portable, and again the battery operated. So we have seen that in the remote areas, even in India, there are some areas where there is no direct current supply at many places throughout the day. So these machines can be charged enough and also can be worked on a battery backup, and these are automatic and requires a minimal training. So if you are maybe thinking that, okay, I want to buy a PCR or perform a PCR, we require a minimal training to carry out to do such things. So it is completely needless, because we offer you the complete ready solution for it. So the technically speaking, the people or the technicians who can do the pipetting techniques well will also be able to the do the PCR. And as you can see, the analyzers which we have are Wi-Fi and a Bluetooth connected. So whatever the software updates which are coming, or which new parameters which are coming, the device can be updated with that. And this Wi-Fi connectivity and Bluetooth connectivity also helps in to transport the results or send the results directly to the patient or directly to the reporting doctors as well. Now, going much into little details about the devices, there are some reagents and consumables for use with the TruePrep Auto as well as the TrueLab devices. So that's we are going to see here. So the TruePrep, the first consumable which is required for the COVID-19 analysis is the TruePrep Auto transport media for the swab specimen pack. Now, this is a media which collects where we collect the sample, and it decontaminates, and it will as well as transport the swab specimen from one place to other place. So you can see the pack size in this is around 20 tests, 50 tests, even 5 tests are available, and we are coming up with the 100 tests as well. So you can see the small bottle will be there with a transport media of 1.5 ml. And the intended use for not only for the COVID, but we also use this transport media for other disease parameters such as HPV, CTNG. So these parameters also can be performed with this, plus H1N1 influenza A/B. So it acts as a inactivating media for the virus as far as the COVID-19 is concerned. And it was also been documented by ICMR in a report of inactivation efficacy of a TrueNat swab collection media and a lysis buffer. So the conclusion, they come up with the experiments, and the experiments were conducted as per the reference from the Schmitter et al. 2015, which concluded that the clinical samples containing viral particles with 100% efficacy were inactivated, as evident there were no cytopathological changes were observed in the in vitro cultures, and the negative results by SARS-CoV-2 real-time PCR were obtained with that. So this proves that the transport media which we use is inactivating the virus, and once the sample is collected into the transport media, it is no more infectious to the technician who is performing the extraction or who is performing on the TrueNat devices. And this also minimizes the the need of the biosafety levels. So with that, the second consumable which we use on this is the TruePrep Auto Universal Sample Pre-Treatment Pack, that is the lysis buffer pack. So in this pack also, which comes in a 20 test, 50 test and 100 test, and it is intended for the lysis of the sample. So whatever the transport media which is collected from that, some amount of sample is added into the lysis buffer bottle, and it is the sample is lysed, and with the help of the transfer pipettes, it can be transferred to the cartridges where we can do the extractions. Now both the transport media as well as this can be stored at 2 to 40 degrees Celsius for 2 years with a stability, and this doesn't require any need to refrigerate the reagents as well. So reagent refrigeration is not required, because many settings, rural settings where these facilities are not available. So at that particular point, this need is very much important. Coming to the third consumable, this is the TruePrep Auto Universal Cartridge Based Sample Prep Kit. Now, this kit contains the the reagent which is used to attach to the extractor device from the behind, and there is also the cartridge pouches which are there. So this also comes in a pack size of 25, 50, and 100. And this particular kit contains the new set of a reagent which we call as a V2 reagent, which is ready to use. Earlier, we at many places you might most of the users might be using those bottles. So this we have come up with this new reagent pack where it can be directly connected to the device itself. So you don't have to take out the tubings and then put it back to the reagent bottle. So that need is totally avoided with this. And we have this in the cartridge pouch. We have the cartridge, the elute collection tube, tube label, and disposable transfer pipette. And this reagent as well can be stored at a 2 to 40 degrees Celsius for 2 years. Just giving a recap of all the three consumables. All the three consumables are used on a TruePrep Auto device for the extraction. So for the collection of the sample, for the pre-treatment of the sample, and for the extraction of a nucleic acid. So all these three reagents get used on a TruePrep Auto, as the name suggests. There are some reagents which will be used on a TrueLab device as well, which we'll going to see that. So this is what the cartridge looks like. So if you can see this, if you can see my cursor, that particular part is called as the sample chamber, where the pre-treated sample in a lysis buffer can be poured in with the help of the transfer, with the help of the pipette. And there is another chamber over here where the matrix is there. So this matrix chamber actually, filters the sample or purifies the DNA and RNA, and the captured DNA and RNA is then at the end collected in the elute collection chamber over here. So the total nucleic acids which are collected, they will be collected over here, and around 120 to 150 microliter of the nucleic acids get collected at this point. So this particular extraction takes around 20 minutes to obtain a PCR ready DNA or RNA. So we have some consumables which are used on the TrueLab analyzer. So once the extraction is done and the nucleic acids are collected, then it can be ran on specific disease-specific chips. So since we are talking about COVID-19, so we'll come directly to this Beta-CoV. So Beta-CoV, the intended use is for the beta corona virus, which is a Sarbacovirus. In a RNA in a human oropharyngeal and a nasopharyngeal swab specimen. And this test is recommended for the use for the first line screening test for COVID-19, as E gene is screening gene. And as the name suggests, beta coronavirus, so it contains all the families of the coronavirus. So whenever this the sample is detected, it only means that the coronavirus family is detected. So it screens for the coronavirus family. So whatever the samples which are reported positive by TrueNAT Beta-CoV may be confirmed using the confirmatory tests as called as a SARS-CoV. So initially, when we came into market, we came with the Beta-CoV, and later on, subsequently, we launched the SARS-CoV-2 confirmatory kit as well. So target gene, the E gene as well as the RNSP gene, which acts as the full process internal positive control for checking the proper swab collection and the nucleic acid extraction and PCR. The test duration for this is around 35 minutes. So in all, if we consider the total sample to result time is around, approximately 1 hour. So the storage and stability of this particular kit is around 2 to 30 degrees Celsius for 2 years. However, this kit can be, stored in a refrigerator at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius also at certain conditions. So as you can see here in the figure, there is something called as a microtube, micro pipette, and that is 6 microliter, and the microchip. So if you open this chip pouch, you'll be finding this microchip, microtip, and the microtube. So going on to TrueNAT SARS-CoV-2. The intended use of this is again the same. Only the difference here is that it is a confirmatory kit and it has a target gene as a RDRP gene. As we know, there are certain genes which are referred to be as a confirmatory targets by the CDC and WHO. From them, one of is the RDRP. So other confirmatory genes such as ORF1A, ORF1B, and N genes are also used by many manufacturers. So here also the test duration is around same, and it's called as a follow-on test. That means that once the beta cov is tested positive, then the same nucleic acids which are extracted can be loaded then on the SARS-CoV-2 chip. This also has a stability of same duration. Then recently, in the month of September, there was a lot of demand in the market that both the targets can be brought on a same target. So we then came up with this TrueNAT COVID-19 assay as well. And the intended use is although similar, but here the target genes acts as a E gene as a screening and the ORF1A gene as a confirmatory gene. So both the assays can be detected in a same go. So you don't have to repeat the samples or something like that. And this particular kit is now available in the market, and this also takes the similar time, and it also reduces the cost and the time factor which was earlier issue. And this also has a storage and stability of 2 to 30 degrees Celsius for 2 years. So if you see MolBio has a 3 assays. So these assays were also validated by Indian Council of Medical Research, and the revised guidelines for this was came in 24th September, wherein which ICMR has stated that the assay 1, that is a TrueNAT beta cov E gene screening, and assay 2 is a TrueNAT SARS-CoV-2 RDRP gene confirmatory assay. So assay 1 needs to be followed by assay 2 for the confirmation of the results. Now the third assay is a multiplex assay, which contains the step 1 is the E gene screening assay, which screens, and the step which screens, and the simultaneously it is also confirmed with the ORF1A target. So this is a multiplex platform. So we'll discuss about it more in detail when we'll discuss about the CT values, and I'm sure Dr. Anusha will also highlight on the interpretation part. So coming to the user perspective, there are some key considerations while performing the test, and some of the challenges which can be overcome, and general precautions which should be taken while running the test. So we'll just have a short look at all those things. The first is, when we start using the test or start using the device for the first time, the first important thing is the reagent connection. Here you can see there's a TruePrep Auto V2 reagent now coming into the market. So wherever the government sector we have supplied the devices, these devices will be there. And this can be connected to this reagent. So you can see there is a protective cap for the connector. And this protective cap on the connector can be removed before connecting to the device, and see that the connector of the reagent pack is exactly fitting to the connector. So it is fixed in a similar dimensions, and do not keep the connector down after removing its protective cap. So what happens that it contains the reagent, so sometimes because of the vacuum it may fall down if you open it. So after opening, don't just keep the connector down, otherwise the reagents will flow because of the its nature. So it is very important that as soon as the protective cap is removed, you have to hold it up straight up and then connect the reagents directly to the device. So you can see in this slide where we have highlighted with this circle made over here how the device can be connected. So the right way is proper connection, and you can see here is a loose connection. So if there is a loose connection, there might be a leakage of the reagent from here, which will then have a spillage on the tabletop. So there is a right way of doing that and a wrong way of connecting the reagent. So this is one top view. So you can see on here there is a pushing button over here. So if you push this button, it will automatically go in and it will just lock it over here. So you have to make sure that this connection is always proper. It is not loosely connected to the device. Otherwise, the extraction won't happen properly. Now, the second step into this is the sample pre-processing. So most of the time in the many setups where the PCRs are not used, so they are not actually well known to the contaminations which it can cause and all. So following a proper lab practices is also very important thing over here. So if you see in this figure, there are two ways of taking out a pipette. So we have given disposable pipettes along with the devices, which is 1 ml disposable pipette and a 3 ml disposable pipette. So these pipettes should be removed from the pouches in such a way that you do not put your hand inside the pouch. So otherwise what will happen that if there are some stresses of the sample on your gloves or anything, then the whole set of the pipettes will get contaminated. So we are working on a solution so where we can give you the individually pouched transfer pipettes as well. So till then, this process, proper lab process should be followed. The another area of the concern is transferring the solutions. So many people at many places are not apt at doing this. So many times what happens, we tend out to aspirate a wrong amount of solution. So if you are aspirating less than or more than 0.5 ml of solution, then there might be some problems occur in the extraction. So if you're having less amount of sample itself, then it will give you a false negative result as well if it is a very low load. If it is more than 0.5 ml, that means you are over filling the sample chamber, so it can also start leaking because of that. So these particular things you have to keep it in mind and make sure that you are taking the sample to the 0.5 ml mark itself. And when you are dropping this particular transport solution into the lysis buffer tube, you have to take care that you dip the transfer pipette, immerse the transfer pipette inside the lysis buffer as shown in figure number 5. Whereas many of places I have seen that they have tried to do it from the top. So what happens is there is again a spillage. So this spillage, can bring out to the contamination chances as well. So it is very necessary that after the, at the start of the test in the daytime, during the daytime, early morning, or at the night when you stop the testing, it is very much needed that you clean the surfaces, tabletop, and your devices with the 0.5% of sodium hypochlorite solution, followed by a sterile water, so that there is no traces of any contamination. Now, the next, as I said, this is also again the transferring the lysis buffer to the cartridge. Here we can see the cartridge is placed on the cartridge stand. So cartridge stand importance is very much over here, because here what happens is that many of places, if you are not using the cartridge stand, the cartridge would not stand in a erect position. So you can see slide number 5 here, image number 5 here, wherein the pipette is exactly immersed inside the sample chamber and the contents are released slowly. So you have to make sure that you are doing in this way only. Many of places you try to drop it from top, or you just try to touch the upper neck part of the sample chamber. So that is can cause spillage of the reagent as well, or the lysis buffer. And many of places we have seen that they have directly taken the lysis buffer tube and tried to decant it into the sample chamber. So that will also not do, because that is posing a lot of threat of spillage and contamination because of this. So what are the next challenges? Like many of places we have seen that cartridge is not fitting properly and all. So before loading the cartridges, those who are the TrueNAT users, they might be knowing that there is a washers on the cartridges. So these washers are exactly fitting into the nozzles. So you can see there is a pink color spot over here, which is called as a washer, which is actually on the cartridges. So when you are putting in the the second cartridge or repeating the next sample, you have to see that from the previous extraction there is no any washer stuck on the nozzle. Otherwise, the cartridge fitting inside won't be proper, and a proper heating would not happen, or the proper extraction of the sample may not happen because of this. So this is has to be taken with the utmost care. So before running the cartridge, you have to check whether there is any washer stuck on the nozzles of the previous run. So this is how the cartridge is placed in the cartridge stand when you are going to extract. So many of places I have seen that even the TruePad auto extractor is kept in a laminar flow hood, and the analyzer is on the different table. So what you have to do is, when you carry these cartridges from one place to another place, you make sure that you are placing the cartridges into the cartridge stand, and then only you are carrying, so that there is no any tilting of the cartridges, which can pose again a threat of spillage. And you can see there is only one orientation where the cartridge can be fitting. So there's wrong orientation is exactly opposite. So that way, if you try to do also, the cartridge won't go inside the device. So this is has to be taken care. And then I have seen many places a lot of complaints coming up that the door is getting jammed, or door is damaged or something like that. Many of places we have seen that the ejection or the closing of the cartridge door is very rough way. So it is handled roughly. So if you see that when you close the cartridge, you have to make sure a click sound is coming, and that actually ensures that the cartridge is properly placed, and the cartridge door is being closed properly. So you don't need to have to ensure that after pushing it very hard only the cartridge door will get closed or something like that. So please don't try this. So if you are using this in a gentle manner, it will long last. Then the second part is the chip handling processes. Many times we have seen that even when you are taking out the chip from the pouch, it is handled in a wrong way. Or sometimes what happens is that we try to take out the chip first, and then try to put in the patient details in the device. The first proper practice is, once you collect the elute, first of all, before opening the chip, you have to see that you are typing proper patient infographics into the device. That is the patient details, sample ID, male, female, all those credentials will come, and then only you have to make sure that you are opening the chip pouch. Otherwise, the chip is containing probes and primers in the master mix also. So that gets exposed to the light, so and the temperature. So you make sure that you are only opening the chip when all these things have been done. And always hold the chip at the edges only, as you can see in the left side image, uh, where the chip is always hold from the side angles. Do not try to touch on the contact pad. So you can see there are some golden lines which actually are used for the current flow, which takes because of which the thermal cycling takes place. So what happens is, if you are trying to touch that part might get damaged due to electrostatic force, and many more things such as, and it may give you error once also because of this. Try do not touch even the reaction well. So there is a white reaction well, so please do not touch that as well, because if you try to touch that, then these error 1 results will be also there, or error 3 results also will be there because of that. The next thing is the placing the chip. Now, many of places we have seen that there were complaints that the chips are not fitting properly. So that may be due to rough handling of this. So the main important thing while you are placing the chip, it should be exactly into the straight direction. It should fit in, and there are 4 pinholes which will be used for fitting the chip. So there is a right way is towards the well should be facing towards your side, and you can see there are 4 pin trays as shown here in the image 1. So I have also arrowed it like this. So these are very sharp and blunt. So many a times what happens, the damage is done while taking out the chip from the tray. So while checking out the chip, make sure you are taking out properly. Then there are 2-3 images at the down, correct image of where the chip is properly being placed on the chip tray, whereas there are some instances where the chip was not placed properly, and once the chip is loaded, then error 4 is there or error 1 is there. So these kinds of error may be because of improper placing of the chips. So these should be avoided. Then comes the master mix. So in the chip pouch, as I said, there is a master mix tube. Now this master mix tube, once you take it out from the the sleeve, you place it in a tube stand. So we have given in an accessory something called as a TrueLab tube stand, which is used for keeping the micro tubes like this. So you can see there is a small pellet, white pellet, which we call as the master mix cake. So what happens during the transport? Sometimes the lyophilized master mix cake gets dislodged from its original position. So make sure by just tapping it gently on the table or something, you bring it to its original position, and it should be always in an intact position. So if your master mix cake is dispersed, or it is totally dislodged into small fragments, then please do not use it, and please inform us so that we can look into that. So these things need to be taken care of. And once the cap is opened, please do not keep those master mix cap onto the table surfaces, because that can act again as a potential contaminator. So please, once you take out the tubes, caps, you immediately dispose those cap in a 0.5% hypochlorite solutions. Then pipette handling procedures and precautions. Now, many of places we have seen that there was an issue with pipetting as well. Let me make you one thing clear, that these are very easy to use pipettes, and these are a single push pipette. So there is no double push criteria here as well. So those who are not acquainted with good pipetting techniques and all, for them this was designed keeping into mind. So while taking the tip from the pouch, make sure that you are not taking out the tip with the gloves in the hand. So try to always hold the tip in the sleeves itself from the outside, and try to connect it to the pipette so that it gets properly connected. So don't try to push it so hard that the tip also the tip will also get bent. There is some instances wherein which the tip is not connected properly to the pipette. So we also change these pipettes after every 3 months or 6 months, or after every 3 to 6 months. So you can also contact our Mole Bio support team in your local area, and if the pipettes are not working, we are replacing those pipettes as well. So if you are not your pipettes are not working properly, or something like that, then you can change those also. Make sure that the tips are properly connected. And the proper steps are shown here, so which is already well known to many of you. And once the you put the 6 microliter into master mix, make sure that you place a micro tip directly above the master mix cake, and then press the piston and drop the elute slowly by pressing the pipette. Now many of places we have seen that the technicians are putting it on the wall of the tube, wherein which what happens, they have to either tap it and then again they have to aspirate and see that it is mixing properly. By doing so, we are actually sometimes even the master mix will get degraded because of this kind of actions. So make sure that it is properly placed, and automatically once it is placed properly, within 30 seconds it will get dissolved. So you do not have to reverse pipette it or try to not to mix the solution during the incubation time. So once it is incubated properly, you can see here that there is a small image over here where we have shown you that it is very clear solution obtained uh, from the incubation. So elute which is obtained after 6 microliter incubation, it will be like this when it is dissolved. So if the master mix is repipetted and mixing is done, you will probably get the bubbles. So please make sure that there are no bubbles in the master mix, because these bubbles may interact during the thermal cycling also, and there may be what we can say evaporation of the elute because of this. So the next part is the chip elute loading, which from my point at least is much more critical part in the all the things. So what happens here is that you once you take the elute back with the tip, you put it on the microchip and let the drop form first below the tip by pressing the pipette. Once the drop is formed, placed directly over the well. So what happens, the drop actually get in touch with the reaction well polymer, as there is a small polymer inside, and once you touch the drop to the well, it gets automatically released into the reaction well. Try not to touch the tip directly to the reaction well, or try to poke or pierce the reaction well. That may hamper the results also, and you may get error 3 results also. While loading, make sure that you do not attempt to load the elutes from a distance. Like many people or technicians, they are very much sure that I will be able to do it with the one hand. But since it is a very micro solution, 6 microliter itself, you have to make sure that it goes properly into the reaction well itself. And you can see here there are some precautions during the spillage as well. So there inside the TruePrep Auto device, there is arrangement of a replaceable tray. So this tray acts as a protection to the device, so that if any spillage is there, that happens into this spillage tray. So these spillage trays are also given as the accessory to all the places, all the TrueNAT users, and these also can be asked from us on the demand. So this will be supplied to you also. So make sure that when every test is done, that there is no any replacement, there is no any spillage. So you have to check after every what we can say every test, there is no any spillage into the device. If the spillage is there, then you can clean it with the discard the tray into hypochlorite solution and clean the cartridge with the 70% IPS solution with you. So there is something called as a slider glass, which is there in a TrueLab devices. So those who are using these slider glasses, these slider glasses needs to be regularly changed. Now, regularly, when I mean, that is after every 200 tests, or whenever you start getting some kind of error 5 results or error 3 results, or for that matter error 1 results are getting, then it is better you change the slider glasses. So these slider glasses are provided by all the Molbio support staff, and it can be also taught to you on the training can be given to you on how to put it. So you have to remove the slider glass by opening the close and open close tray option, B option, and just with the forceps you have to take out the slider glass and see. And if it is having moisture or any kind of thing, you have to just throw it and take the new slider glass. The new slider glass will be having protective covering on both the sides. So there is a green covering on one side, and on the other side there is a transparent covering which can be removed with the or peeled off with the forceps. And once it is peeled off, it can be carefully, without scratching, you can directly put it into the device, so that gets automatically sit on the layer, and then you can close the tray. So this particular thing can be taught to the technician, and the technician also can ask us regarding the slider glass. It is provided everywhere free of cost. We don't charge anything for that. And this is a regular thing which you have to do if you are running too many samples in your if your load is very high. So there are some error messages, invalid results. So we'll discuss about this now. There are some error messages on the cartridges, such as the cartridge valve error and the cartridge error. Now, what is the cartridge valve error? Now, cartridge valve error means I have shown here you the cartridge image, and there you can see I have highlighted the circle. So that is actually V1, valve 1 and valve 2. Now, by chance, if due to a manufacturing defect or anything, if that cartridge valve is not revolving, then you may get a cartridge valve error. So this cartridge valve error can happen because of this. This particular valves are objective is to flow the sample from one chamber to other chamber. That's why the valve works. So if you are repeatedly getting this particular error, then you have to contact the Molbio support for taking a proper action, because the root cause can be other things as well. So if it is happening on a regular basis or a continuous basis, then please get in touch with us. Then there is a cartridge error as well. Now this cartridge error are also related to cartridges, as well as it is related to the TruePrep auto extraction device as well. So if it is related to only one or two instances, it may be because of one or two cartridges where the vacuum is not, suction is not happening properly. As I in an earlier slide I have shown you that there is a washer stuck on the nozzle. So this cartridge error also may be because of that, because the vacuum is not then generated properly. So you have to make sure that there is no any washer stuck, because of which the cartridge error can arise. But if it is happening quite on a regular basis or a continuous basis, then please inform us. Our engineer will visit your place and do the troubleshooting at site. Then there is a cartridge clogging and cartridge not loaded. So cartridge clogging is a error where usually is not seen in the COVID, but in a sputum samples, usually we see this cartridge clogging because of the sputum sample nature. If the sputum specimen sample is too thick, or if sometimes what happens is when you are taking the swabs, if there is a little amount of blood, something like that, then it may sometimes, if it is not dissolved properly, it gets stuck into the cartridge chamber, and the cartridge will give you a clogging error. The best thing is to repeat the extraction with a fresh cartridge. So whatever the remaining sample will be there with you, you have to repeat with that and make sure that it is properly specimen is properly liquefied. So cartridge not loaded is like cartridge doesn't get detected. So this is a new error which is added, because we are planning for some kind of a barcode for the cartridges as well. So if that barcode is not working or the cartridge is not loaded properly, this message will show. So ensure that the cartridge is loaded properly in a correct orientation. Now reset card is a, yes.
We may have a time overrun as well.
Okay,
so it's
okay.
very good
So,
going. So please,
Yes, I know. So we are just finishing this. So there are a lot many errors like reset card and invalid card rates reset. So that can be contacted to the Molbio team as well. And the RTD errors can be looked after also by Molbio support team. So there are two types of RTD errors. Then this probably because of the heating plates are there inside the devices. Because of that, it may be there, but it can be immediately replaced if you contact the Molbio support team. So we also offer standalone units for the places where there is a lot of load. So error one, as you can see here, there is a possibility where you get error one because of temperature cycling and all, and you get like this graphs. So if you are getting in a continuous mode, please contact Molbio supports. There is error three. Error three is probably related to improper sample loading. So this mostly happens because of that. But if it is happening on a regular basis, please immediately get in contact with the MolBio support. They can calibrate the device by using the calibration chip with them. Then the is the error file. Error file, as I said, if the master mix is not properly loaded or mixed on a regular basis, then the probe levels can go down and the fluorescence level can go down. If the slider glass is having some issues, then error 5 will be a normal regular thing. So if it is occurring regularly, please make sure you are changing the slider glass. Unable to read chip information. So all the chips has inbuilt memory inside, where which the chip data is fed into the chip, like expiry date and everything. So if any chip is like this, please remove and reinsert back by selecting the profile again. If it is happening again, then please get back to us. There are some troubleshooting methods for the invalid results with the universal control. Now, talking about the controls, we also have a universal control kit. This universal control kit can be used for troubleshooting. So these can be also used for regularly doing QC in your labs for new lots, or whenever you are receiving running samples after 15-20 days, you can run one universal positive control, or whenever you are getting continuous invalid results. So this particular troubleshooting will help. If you don't have the universal control, please contact MolBio support. They can come there and do the troubleshooting for both TrueLab device as well as the extraction device also, from which the cause of invalid also can be found out. Now there are some CT cutoff given recently after the suggestions from the ICMR and ICMR review committee meeting which was held with MolBio, and a suggested implementation of a CT cutoff was done for a TrueNAT. Now this particular was done in line to ensure that the TruePrep RT-PCR values, TrueNAT RT-PCR values are in line with the conventional RT-PCR tests also, because there were certain instances where we have got the CT values above 32, and when the sample is been run on a conventional RT-PCR, it has turned to be negative. So to have that little bit parity between the results, it was decided that whatever is above 32 CT should be taken in proper consideration with a clinical correlation. So this is the CT cutoff, which is also for RDRP and eGene, but I am right now showing here eGene and ORF. So this particular cutoffs were given, as well as if it is above cutoff, then it will show you that is CT values are above 32 CT, then it will show you automatically above target cutoff. And regarding presumptive positives and all interpretation of this, definitely Dr. Anusha will be taking care of this. So just not putting much into this, just to have a recap, we have had this proper introduction of a technology, then various modules of the TrueLab system, then a TrueNAT assays, various assays which you can have options for, and the key consideration while doing. See, you may be finding this very small things, but these small things makes a bigger change. So there were some errors and invalid results also discussed, troubleshooting aspects, and CT cutoff and interpretation. So thank you all. So if you have any questions, we can discuss. Yes, Dr. Prashant, to you.
Yeah, Dr. Shivraj, thank you for taking us through all the details and recapping it. Dear viewers, we might have slight time overrun, but I believe session is very interesting, and we will be. So I'm inviting Dr. Anusha to share her experience on actual lab experience. And Dr. Anusha, over to you. You may please start your lecture. Yeah.
So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the kind invitation from the MolBio team, as well as from Find India. Thank you so much for helping me be a part of this. I'm really pleased to be able to come and talk to you all. So I'm actually going to talk to you more from a user point of view because okay, so we had in our hospital, we have a lab where we do molecular biology testing, but we were using a closed system with the CBNAT until COVID came. and there was an extreme shortage for the availability of CBNAT cartridges, and it was just not able to supply with our, with our load that we had. And that's when we went in for a MolBio device. And for the first time, I have to tell you, I'm extremely pleased that this product developed in our country in India has done so well to bring almost literally point of care diagnostics to COVID-19 and has helped so many labs in the bargain. So I bring you greetings from my hospital. And jumping right in, I'm going to talk to you about this, the most important thing. As far as the process is concerned, you have to understand, you have to be able to understand that the extraction processes after the sample collection. So the most important part of this whole concept is when you are able to, one second, sorry. Are you able to see the slides?
Yeah, sure. If you can also turn on your video, that will be great. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
definitely we
All
are
right.
able to see.
Right. Okay. So as you know, in microbiology, any test, it is garbage in, garbage out. So if you pick up the right sample, it is more likely that you're going to get the right result that comes out of it. Now, here I would like to bring your attention to 2-3 key points that all of you need to keep in mind. So a nasopharyngeal swab is a little more difficult to take. So you run the swab through the base of the nose until you reach resistance, where you really rub through on each of the nostrils. But an oropharyngeal swab is what is very easy to take. So you ask the patient to put their tongue out, say ah, so that the soft palate is lifted off, and you can touch the oropharynx and you can take a sample. So one of the biggest advantages of the MolBio's TrueNat COVID-19 kits are that they are validated for oropharyngeal swabs, and that makes our sample collection extremely easy. The problem is that if there is a compromised sample collection, like for example, if the sample that is taken is not a nasopharyngeal swab but a nasal swab, because the patient finds it very difficult when you are going to push something across the nose. Secondly, when you're sitting in a kiosk to collect the sample, it may be difficult to reach the base of the nose. All right. So the next important thing is, what about saliva? So saliva is really being spoken about, and that has seemed to be a better sample and probably very easy to get. And so probably saliva is going to be, the sample of testing COVID-19 in the future. Lower respiratory specimens. So supposing you have a patient who has, for example, a COVID-19 test done, which is negative, clearly negative, but you have, your CT value, or rather your CT scan that is done, which essentially gives you a CORAD score of 5 or 4, for example, probably 5. Now you're looking more likely that this patient is probably COVID positive or has been COVID positive in the recent past, and you're not able to pick up sample. So the next best thing is to do is to either you repeat the sample, or you take a lower respiratory specimen like sputum, or if the patient is on a ventilator, then you can take either either an ET secretion and do that, and that may improve your yield in these kind of situations. So always remember, please correlate all of your points clinically. It's very, very important to do that. The other good part about the VTM, the viral transport media, which is given in TrueNat kits, is that it's a lysis media. So that gives safety concerns a huge uplift, such that you probably do not require a level 3 biosafety cabinet. You do not require the kind of things that you would require if you were dealing with a live virus. So these are the big benefits that are there with sample collection. So there was a recent advisory from the government, Indian Council of Medical Research, on TrueNat and CBNat, and they looked at the following things. So the TrueNat has been validated, and Cepheid has been validated by US FDA. So ICMR recommends that testing for CBNAT for SARS-CoV-2 is carried under biosafety level 2 conditions. So that is the biosafety level that you require with appropriate biosafety precautions. Any laboratory which is already functional for SARS-CoV-2 by real-time PCR with biosafety level 2 may initiate testing with CBNAT according to all of the ones that have been done. So the specimen collection and transport must be according to the accordingly performed with appropriate PPE. And the government says that they should have either a biosafety cabinet of type 2A or 2B, and the staff requirement has to be availability of a minimum staff, that is a trained microbiologist for handling molecular virology work, technicians at least 2 to 3 years of experience with respiratory pathogens, and multitasking staff for washing, cleaning, etc. What is the desired expertise they suggest? Good understanding of laboratory biosafety and biosecurity, and training that they have already received for handling respiratory specimens. Experience in work in virology, and a robust institutional policy for biomedical waste of human origin. So you see that is highlighted. So biomedical waste is very, very important. Well-defined arrangements for segregation and discarding of biomedical waste. So in addition to the above, if you want to initiate, you should be able to take an NABL accreditation for molecular detection of viruses, either by real-time PCR or specific CBNAT, and the ICMR guidelines and testing strategy may be strictly followed. They also tell you that since the guidelines evolve periodically, you should look at the latest version. So it's very important that you keep on looking at the ICMR portal. Now, in the early days, we were really freaked out. All of us did not know the transmission of the virus, though we knew that the virus was being transported with viral lysis media. We were still using full PPE with N95 masks and face shields. And as you see, the working conditions with the PPE were really, really difficult. As time went by, we came to know how we are able to handle this better. So we have a level 3 biosafety cabinet, and we were being able to do that. Finally, we were able to understand that this kind of fear is not required when we were dealing with this. So we went on to now we're using a 2B cabinet for the whole process. And you will also see there that all of them are wearing their N95 masks along with scrubs in the hospital. There is no additional PPE, and there is eye protection that is there. So we've also evolved in our process to be able to understand how we've gone from then to now. Let's jump right into the results of the the TrueNat that you're doing and how to interpret them. So if you see here, there are two graphs. The one of that of a positive and the second negative. So the first thing that you have to see when you are looking at a graph like this is, please see first if the control has worked. So the red line is your control, okay? And you see here in the first case, the red line, the control has started picking up at about 24 cycles. And then the ORF and the E gene have picked up earlier than the control at 20 and 20.6 and 20.6 cycles each. You can look at the graph and it's S-shaped, and that is called a sigmoid curve or a sigmoid graph. Okay. If you look at the negative result here, the only graph that has raised is the control graph, which raised from 21 cycle onwards. So it is clearly way acceptable. And you can also see that the E gene and the ORF1 gene, ORF1A is not detected. When you have an invalid result, please see how the graph is seen. So invalids are unlikely to happen when the internal control fails to pick up between the stipulated range. So in these cases, you should be able to rerun it with a fresh chip. So you have lost about 40 minutes of time running. Instead of restarting the whole process and re-eluting it, you can directly take that elute and you can rerun it with a new chip. So it is only the problem of the chip that has occurred there. As has already been mentioned, there are some errors that we need to be aware of. One is error 1. In this, as you can see, this error, there is no graph at all that is seen. You don't see a flat line either. So this is when the test chip is faulty. And this error is displayed when the thermal cycling does not happen at all. In the second graph there, which is error 2, here also you are not seeing any difference. But how do you differentiate between error 1 and error 2? Look at the run status. Here it is talking about error 2 versus in the first graph it is error 1. Here in error 2, it has been manually stopped. You have an option to stop a test when it's continuing, right? So this is where it is manually stopped. And that is what error 2 is. When we are talking about error 3, that is incorrect optical profile, this error is displayed when there's a deviation in the expected optical profile due to reduction in the reaction volume in the chip during the course of the reaction. And how do you figure that out? Look at your control. There is no rise in the control. So obviously you are not able to interpret this test. And you're also looking at the ORF1 gene, which is kind of, there's no sigmoid curve at all. Whereas in error 4, here you see that this error is displayed when the run data capture or analysis is incomplete. So here again, you see no data at all coming in. The next thing that you're looking at is the error 5, which is your probe check error. In this error, the display is looking at an event of low initial signal due to which there is insufficient master mix that has been pipetted into your chip, due to which it is not rising at all. So this is what error 5 means. Now I'm going to take you through a couple of difficult cases that we've had. This is a case from my own hospital. Actually, this is from one of my own staff who was not well. He had a bad cough, and when we ran his sample initially, the result was negative. So that was the run 1 that you see here. Now, nothing that when we looked at this graph gave us any indication that we were doing something wrong. But my poor microbiologist who was here had continuation of symptoms, due to which he was given leave. And after 1 week, when we had visit from the Mall Biotechnical person, he looked at this graph and taught us what the error was. So if you look at where the though the run status is valid and the E gene and N gene not detected, from the same elute, we reran it about a week later. And here you see the nice curves coming with the sigmoid shape, and it was tested positive. Now, what did we learn out of this whole thing? When you look at this in run 1, the result was negative, but still an optical disturbance was there. So you see here, there is a crisscrossing of lines, and it is happening very early in the reaction. And then after that, it rises not with the usual sigmoid curve, but later in the reaction. So in this kind of cases, when you see a graph like this, it is best that you take the elute and rerun it again with a second chip, just to be sure about what you're looking at. So when I'm talking about elute, threshold, CT value, baseline, what do you all mean by all of this? So let me explain each of these to you. Now, when you put all these reagents in, that is, you put the test, the primer, the master mix, a lot of the enzymes that are required for the multiplication and the amplification, the fluorescence signaling chemicals, as well as your target. When you're putting all of that into a particular small tube for the reaction to happen, initially there is a change as the temperature rises, and there is a background fluorescence that occurs. Okay, now this fluorescence may fluctuate due to changes in the reaction medium, and that creates a background signal. Now, this signal is most evident in the early part of the cycle, when you have a lot of reagents there. The reagent excess is right there. Now, during this early PCR cycle, the background signal is used to determine the baseline fluorescence across the entire reaction plate. And using this baseline signal, you will create a threshold. Now, this is what happens in a normal RT-PCR platform. But in a TrueNAT platform, the threshold is already fixed. Now, the threshold is a statistical value that is created over the baseline. Okay, and when you mean, what do you mean by CT value or cycle threshold value? This is the threshold. This is the cycle at the point at which the number of amplicons that are created with the PCR reaction has exceeded the threshold. So when you have a lower CT value, it means that there has been more RNA, due to which the amplification has started early. Whereas when you have a late CT value, it means that the amplification has happened late. All right. And what do you use as the controls in all of these things? You use in the MolBio, you use the RNAs from the throat of the human RNA. IPC is used. Now, this is another case which is very, very interesting, which is what I want to emphasize with this case is to tell you to look at graphs. Now, here in this case, we had a patient who was clearly having signs and symptoms. It was a pediatric patient who had signs and symptoms of COVID-19. But it was, as you know, COVID-19 appears very different in different people. And in children, the population, the way that the way it occurs is slightly different. Now, looking at the first, the first thing we said, the result said the control is okay. It's a valid run. And it said that there is above the linear range. And that was the end of the whole story. But because the patient was continuously having symptoms and the parents could not accept that this patient was positive. So when they contacted the technical staff, opened the graph and saw, look at the graph there. Your control is rising at 22, like how it normally should. But look at the other two, the blue line and the green line, that is the E gene and the ORF gene. They start off way before. So the cutoff or the threshold that MolBio has set is at 10, whereas this is rising even before that, due to which what they had to do was actually dilute the sample and rerun it. And here you see the E gene after dilution was at 11 and ORF gene was CT value was also at 11.5. So this is again emphasizing the point on the requirement of the labs to be aware that don't just look at what the printout says. Please go and look at the graph. It's very important because you're able to get it. Now, the recent, in the end of the talk, the previous speaker, Dr. Shivraj, spoke about the target range. Now, here I want to bring this important issue in mind. So when you say, so there are two aspects of diagnosis of COVID-19. One is of public health importance, that is to see how many cases are there. The second, and whether this person can spread the infection to more people. And the second is that individual patient's outcome. So it's important that you give the right data or the right results to your patients, because say this patient needs to go, for example, I work in a cardiac hospital. So in my case, a lot of patients come here for cardiac surgery. So if this patient has to go for cardiac surgery with a heart-lung machine that is going to do the job for this patient over the time of 5 to 6 hours, and the patient is already going in for surgery with a damaged lung, there is a higher chance that the outcome of the procedure is going to be very, very low. And this is why it is important for you to know where to call what and how do you interpret the results. I'm giving you a couple of more graphs here. You will see that here you have a graph where the control seems a little bit, so is this positive or noise? When you see that, yes, it's not an absolute sigmoid curve. It would be good to repeat the test, but this test is definitely positive. I'm going back to the E gene and the RDRP, or the beta-CoV and the SARS-CoV-2 that were there earlier. In this, you will see that the CT value of the E gene and the RDRP gene is at 30.9. Again, look at the graph. If your controls are running well, you can be rest assured that you're on the right track. Whereas if your control is not running well, first look at what you need to do with that. Now here, do you consider this result positive or negative? Here you will see that the control starts rising at 18th cycle itself. The ORF1 is at 27, but the E gene is negative, not detected. Do you see this kind of results? very much so. And this is what spurred our research work that we did from the Madras Medical Mission, where I looked at quite a few cases coming with the E gene being negative and the ORF1 being positive, or the N gene in CBNAT being positive. And we looked at the GISAID, where we found the different sequences that had already been put in. And finally, we were able to get out this abstract where we found that in Orissa, we were seeing more and more isolates that had deletion of the C-terminal region, including in the primer binding area, which essentially is what we are trying to say, that if your E gene is negative, many of the RT-PCR platforms may not even go ahead to do the second test. They may not even go ahead to do the S gene or the N gene or the ORF1A. They may not even go to do that because the E gene is negative. But a platform which uses both these, like for example, the TrueNAT platform or the Cepheid platform, the chances are that you will pick up these ones which are E gene negative, but the confirmatory gene is positive. So the E gene positive, like was mentioned earlier, explains that it is the virus belongs to a Sarbeco virus family. So what do you mean by that? SARS comes from the Sarbeco, the SAR comes from the SARS-CoV-2. Beta-CoV is the virus. So it is SARS beta-CoV, which is why it's called Sarbeco viruses. All right. So please be sure that don't be, or rather be confident about the results that you're giving. Now let's look at how the CT value is and how to interpret that. Look at this table here. Now, if this E gene value is less than 32 and ORF is negative, okay, they are talking about a presumptive positive. In such cases, you can either take a second sample from the same patient or you can rerun the sample. If the E gene is about, so your E gene is positive and ORF is negative. So here, what it means is that Sarbeco viruses are there. You can either run, say, for example, an RDRP in such cases, or you can rerun the test, or you can take a second sample in this. If the E gene is about 32 as well as ORF is negative, then it's a clear negative because the confirmatory gene is the ORF1A. If the E gene is negative, but the ORF is less than 32, then that's a positive. So this is like the deletion that I was talking to you about. If the E gene is negative and the ORF is about 32, again, it's a negative. But if the E gene is less than 32 and the ORF is also less than 32, then it's a clear positive. If the E gene is about 32, but the ORF is less than, so it's a confirmatory again, so that is again positive. If the E gene is about is less than 32, which essentially means that it's positive, but the ORF is about 32, then again it's a presumptive positive. Now, as a clinician, you would also know that there is no much understanding with the concept of presumptive positive. You either have it positive or you have it negative. So the best way to go about when you have a presumptive positive is either you take another sample or a lower respiratory specimen, or you correlate the findings with the CT scan, okay, and you will be able to get better results. If the E gene is about 32 and the ORF is also about 32, then it's a clear negative. And if both are negative, it's negative. This has already been spoken about, so I'm going right ahead. Now, when we have a problem with our machine or with our elute, what do we do? So let me show you how we go about it. So first thing, we will open and see whether those washers are in place. So whether there's any washer in those places. So there are 3 places where you can find washers. When your TrueNAT guy comes next time with the application specialist, please ask them to show you where to look at. The second thing we look at is the volume of the reagents in each of those containers. Okay, again, sometimes what happens is the volume is too low and the machine may not have flagged it out for you. So please look for that. The third thing is whether the immersion was proper. So there may be kinking of the tube inside that particular vial. So that is also something that you can do. This does not require any sort of a you don't require to be a mol biotechnical specialist to understand this. These are small things that you can do on your own. Now, being an NABL assessor, I've also assessed quite a quite a few labs, and I'm going to bring my attention to you to the requirements of NABL, or rather to get your NABL in place for doing mol bio testing. Now, please understand that any test, but even if you're going for one test for NABL or you're going for 10 tests for your assessment, the requirements are the same. They are not going to change because you have one test there. You will have to be able to prove that your organization and you've got the necessary licenses, your quality management system is in place, you have adequate document control in place, you have service agreements with various providers, service providers, your referral labs, you have MOUs appropriately with them. Whatever supplies you're getting, have you done a QC for all of them? Are they coming with a QC certificate? What are the advisory services that you offer along with your with the clinicians? So supposing you have a presumptive positive, you pick up the call and talk to them and see what is there. Next is the resolution of complaints. So if there is a patient who has a grievance that he has to mention, don't shut him up. All you can do is give him a grievance paper and ask him to write it down. Penning it down, one, will make him feel better, and two, you will be able to look at it at a deeper level once the patient leaves the premises. Resolution of complaints followed by identification. You have, for example, you have to have the process well in place, right? Like in our own lab, there are issues that we figure out after we have committed the error. Like, say a wrong kit has been taken out because it was all kept in the same refrigerator, due to which a wrong set of reagents have been used. So this is a non-conformity which is raised. Now, for this, you have to put in three processes. One is an immediate corrective action to see the error is corrected. So you will have to probably repeat the test. A corrective action, so that you know that you, say if a report has been released, you have to recall it, revise it, inform the end user, and then give that report. And then a preventive action. So you keep different, similar looking reagents in different refrigerators so that you have a lesser chance of having this error in the future. A continual improvement program in terms of training is very, very important, and only keeping the relevant records. So as you all know, all of us must be having a shortness of space as far as this COVID-19 requisition forms are concerned. So how long will you have to store it? Where will you store it? What is the conditions that you have to store it in? All of these things you will have to have your SOPs in place. And then evaluation and audit. So are you having regular audits? You will have, to have your MRM meetings also. All of these things need to be concerned, to be conferred to. Next is the technical requirement. As far as the technical requirement is concerned, the first thing or the most important thing is personnel. In personnel, you will have to have very much the person's training records and all in place. You will also have to see that the personnel who you have taken in are legally valid to work because they have the necessary permits. Accommodation and environmental conditions. So whether the appropriate biosafety requirements are being followed. Are you really doing a doffing and donning as per requirement? What about the lab equipment, reagent, and consumables? As soon as you get the equipment, please ask for your IQ, OQ, PQ certificate and your calibration certificate. Once you get that, look at the reagents, see that none of the reagents have, they're coming with certifications, and all your consumables are in place. Pre-examination, look at your requisition forms. So the ICMR has been updating the requisition forms regularly. So please see that you're using the most current form. Examination processes. So please see that that is in perfect place. Ensuring the quality of examination results. Now, this is very, very important. And I think this is something I'm going to dwell another 1 minute for the benefit of everybody. So as you know, there is an IQC plan that is to be created as per NABL's requirement. Now, this IQC plan is very good as long as you have a national IQAS provider. Yes, very well, you can you can be a part of that and do your EQUAS. But what about for the EQUAS, I mean for the IQC, in case you do not have a national EQUAS provider? So if you look at the NABL clause 5.6.3.2, there are alternative approaches that have been given. That is, whenever an interlaboratory comparison is not available, the laboratory shall develop other approaches. So what do? You can either use certified reference materials. So there are certain companies which are providing, even the MolBio has a universal positive and negative control kit. So that is also to be kept in mind. Previously examined samples, you can use them as controls. You can use material from cells or tissue repositories. So that can also be done. Supposing you ask, now it is very difficult to get for COVID-19, you cannot get the strain, but otherwise you can use that. Or you exchange samples with other accredited labs to be able to show your quality control process. So for the COVID-19 testing alone, I'm going to come back to explain to you how to do your EQUAS. Next is the reporting of the results. So what is your post-examination process? For this, you will have to look at how you are able to look at a patient's result. Are you going to look at the chart? Are you looking at the graph? What are you going to do? All of that makes a difference. Reporting of the result. So if there is a result that is there, how is your result going to be? Are you having the methodology in place? Have you put the right sample collection process in place? Have you put the control passing in place? Have you explained the result? What is the interpretation of the result? All of these things are very, very important. Now, next important thing is the release of results and how that result is released in case you are on leave or in case it is late in the evening. All of this has to be a process that is put in place. Also, if you have a wrong result, do you have a process in place to have it checked, recalled, revised, and then re-reported? All of this, and whether your system is directly connected with your LIS, so that the information is directly going in. All of this needs to be put in place. Now let's look at what the guidelines from the ICMR are. So initially they said all the samples needed to be sent to NIV Pune, but with the surge of testing, obviously it's impossible. So they have mapped the ICMR with validation centers, and they have given these labs the job to do, where you will send 10 random positive and 5 random negative samples for QC. So there's an annexure for that. And you will store all samples at -80 or at least -20. That will ensure regular monthly transfer to the QC lab. Now, in case of discordance, additional 5 positive and 3 negative should be sent. And if QCs are concordant, you can destroy the samples and keep a record that you have discarded these samples. There is no need to send all positive samples to NIV. So here, I want you to note that for all the labs that are under TrueNat or CBNat, they have not been put into the National EQUAS program scheme where they are asking us to send it to these ICMR mapped validation centers. But we have been asked, for example, in Chennai, we are sending 5 positive and 5 negative every 15 days or every fortnight to King's Institute, and we get it validated from them to know that we are in place. In addition to this, we also have an MOU with another hospital here, the Sundaram Medical Foundation, where we are giving them samples and we are taking samples from them and keeping a record of the same. So with this brief, presentation, I'm open to having questions. I would like to thank again the opportunity to present this. It has been a beautiful experience for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anusha, for taking us through result interpretation and also touching upon the NABL requirements as well as ICMR guidelines. We are having multiple questions, but definitely we can take few of them. They range from VTM to development of the test as well as result interpretation. So one question is on VTM, so is there? This VTM is having the lytic properties. So what is the requirement on BSL-2 facility along with the VTM when you are having a lytic facility, a lytic VTM?
Right. So though the VTM, the viral lysis medium that is given along with the TrueNat kit has the ability to destroy the virus. Nonetheless, the requirement of a biosafety level 2 is important to be able to ensure that the personnel who are taking care of it. Now, as you know, there are a lot of the way the sample is taken and put into the VTM, there may be a chance of the total virus not being completely, it is more like, being safe than sorry, which is why it is better that the viral lysis medium, even if used, we still stick on to using a level 2 biosafety cabinet. This is the ICMR requirement, though they have validated the lysis medium given by by MolBio, and they have also mentioned that there is this option that they have to use a, see, when they are giving the CBNAT requirements, they are talking about TrueNAT as well as CBNAT, which is the Cepheid's gene expert. Now, the gene expert does not come with VTM. So that is now being able to, they use the normal VTM for the same, which is why it is important for us to understand that when we are taking, a set of requirements, it is important for us to keep ourselves safe, for which a level 2 biosafety is mandatory.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the statement like better be safe than sorry sums up the thing, and it's better to be safe. Definitely, I mean, there may be a chance that not all the viral particles has been disintegrated and the infectivity is still there. So coming back to another question to Dr. Shivraj. Dr. Shivraj, definitely you are the developer of essays. So there are multiple, conditions right now where people might have a symptom which is similar to COVID, or it may be a SARI, an altogether different thing. So right now the essays are more like it is COVID positive or negative. Are you also looking for developing some essays which covers like, okay, you may be positive A, B, or C, covering 2, 3 different type of, pathogens?
Yeah, so coming to that question, we are actually in a development of lot many S's on a duplex chips. So that also, contains the COVID as well as influenza AB. So that we are, planning to come up with this. And, there are a lot many different, assays in a development along with the saliva samples as well. So we are working out, whether the saliva samples can be used directly for the TB testing as well as for the COVID-19 testing. So many things are into development, but I cannot give you right now a timeline for that. But definitely in a near future, immediately these will be available soon after the validations and evaluations go successful.
Thank you for at least throwing some light. We understand that it may take some time to develop entirely new things. There was a question on VTM and VLM. So VTM is basically viral transport media and VLM is viral lytic media. So that that full form itself solves the question, answer the question. How long the elutes are stable? Let's say one person, eluted the sample and after that they have gone for one particular test and test got invalid. So how long the elute is stable? Definitely one thing, considering that it may be at 4 degrees Celsius or let's say 25 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, so I'll take that question. Of course, Dr. Anusha is also, can speak about it. But we have done certain validations for the, see the stability of the elute, because every RNA, if you are talking about the COVID RNA and HCV RNA, these are having total different stabilities depending on the RNA. As you know that RNA is a single-stranded, gene member. So what we can here do is immediately store the elutes at maybe around 2 to 8 degrees Celsius if you have that, and if you have a -20 or a -80 facility at your place, then it can be stored for a longer duration. Right now we have data till 1 month, and certain evaluations are still going on -20 and -80, that how much it can be assessed for. So we are already completed a 3-month data is there with us, so that if anybody wants, we will be able to share with you. But certainly it has to be with a proper storage conditions. As soon as it is eluted out, it will be only stable for maybe at least 1 or 2 hours, maybe on a room temperature. but immediately if you want to use it for the next day or something like that, you have to have store it in a -20. Also, the second thing is it also depends on the what is the load of the RNA. But many times what happens that the viral load is quite high. So in that the degradation effect is not much seen significantly. But if the viral loads are very low, maybe on a verge of something called as a limit of detection or something like that, LOD, then within the second day or the third day, the RNA degrades and the limit of sensitivity is lost or the limit of detection is lost. So in those cases, we have different viral loads will behave differently for these conditions as well.
Yeah, sure. Considering also how
Yeah.
RNA free the environment is, that is
Yes.
also an
Yes.
important
Yes.
consideration. It should be a dust-free environment
Yes.
to
Yes.
increase the
Certainly.
longevity of the sample. So the last two questions probably for Dr. Anusha. So one thing, it's more on the policy part. One thing is like, is ILC mandatory for COVID-19 testing?
For any test that is part of the NABL, I think it is important that you have your controls in place. And when you are doing large volume samples, like for example, what we are all doing for COVID-19, there is bound to be errors, and that error you will be able to pick up only if you do a proper IQC. Let me put it that way. You have to have a proper IQC in place. To have a proper IQC, you can have either you can register with the international EQUAS providers, or I have already mentioned about the alternate approaches that you can possibly take. But either of this, it will be definitely required.
Thank you. And then there was a very specific question. Can a lab get accreditation only for SARS-CoV-2?
Yes, many labs have got only, but that does not mean, like I told you during the talk, that does not mean that they will, give a very superficial glance at what you have. You have to have your management requirements and your technical requirements completely for the lab, and with specific, interest with SARS-CoV. So yes, it's possible. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we can.
definitely I can hear you. Sorry, probably I was on mute. Yeah. Thank you. That was a nice explanation. Dr. Shivraj, one last question. Uh, so do you also provide synthetic RNAs as positive and negative control in the kit or separately so that labs can do some exercise at their end as well?
Yeah, so we provide this universal control kit, so that can be brought separately as well. Even if you don't have, if you want to run it for 1 or 2 times, if you want to just see how it can be used, you can call in our local MolBio support. They can come with the universal control kit, and they will also give the user the ordering details about it. So, as many labs are going under this NABL accreditation, so that is necessity nowadays. So it gives you the positive and negative control, both the things. So it can be used to run it on a regular basis whenever it is required.
So that can be definitely that can be of great help to the labs, because many of these labs are in remote areas, and doing ILC on frequent basis can be difficult. And if they have the reagent at their place, they can check it out as and when they have suspicion on the results.
Yes.
And when you have a suspicion, you can also do a split sampling.
Okay.
In a split sampling between two different people, having to do it all over again. I think that can also be considered when you are in trouble. It's not a routine basis that you can do it, but yes.
Yeah, definitely. It's more about the troubleshooting we are talking about. Routinely, definitely, it's not a good practice. So So with this, we come to the end of the session, and it was indeed a great question and
Prashant,
answer. Yeah,
Dr.
please.
Prashant, yeah, I just will like to answer one or two questions here because I thought it will be, very important here. The one question was does the RNA extractor work equally good for all sample types? Yes, it works, and as a NTP program goes, flows down now. It is already begun, and 1,200 TrueNAT devices are already gone into the NTP program. So there we do these, sputum samples or a BAL samples as well. So it is also there is also a validation done for the TrueNAT TruePrep auto extractor with the other extraction or the manual extraction or the automated extractors, and it works very really has a good sensitivity compared to other extractors. So the evaluation report also can be downloaded from our website, which is there for the RNA extractor. And the next question I will like to take it for the can sample collected in a non-TrueNAT specified VTM be used for TrueNAT testing? Right now, I will tell only one thing, that technically it can be, but one has to make sure that the TrueNAT which is supplying the transport media, it inactivates the virus. Whereas most of the VTMs in the market, they doesn't have this category. And secondly, you can technically use those, but with the all biosafety requirements. And there are certain validations which are done outside India as well in regards to this. Yes.
So all of these, when you are trying something new, it is important to understand that you need to have validation and verification process for any modification than what has been recommended and given by the company. So as a general rule, it is important that you can manipulate things, but it has to be properly validated and verified.
Yes. Thank you, Doctor.
Yes. So best is like follow the procedure which is approved, and I will not say anything beyond that. Whatever procedure is approved, like if it says that okay, any VTM you can use, then you go ahead with any VTM. If it specifies that you should use this particular type of VTM, you should go ahead with that particular type of VTM, because this is what is approved. Like if it is FDA approval, ICMR approval, or CIVD approval, so they comes as a package. Definitely validations can be done, but definitely you should be very confident you are validating something additional out of what is written on the pack insert. So with that, we are coming to the end of the session. If this
Yes, so
yeah.
if there are many questions, actually we cannot answer all those,
Yeah.
but they can also, I have typed my mail ID. So if any questions are there for all the attendees, they can also revert me on the my email ID. I will be, happy to answer those as well. Thank you very much.
That's really good. That's
and you
really
are
good.
all, you can be in touch with Dr. Prashant, and through Find, you can email Dr. Prashant and he will pass them over to me. I'm happy to, give my results as well.
Yeah, thanks for extending your support even beyond the webinar period. And as and when I get a question, I will definitely forward it to both of you. And viewers, you can directly write to Dr. Shivraj. He has already given his email ID. I can send it later also as well to be in touch with him directly. It was indeed a great question and answer session, enriching the learning and experience, including mine. And we take this opportunity to thank Dr. Anusha as well as Dr. Shivraj for this session. We also thank all the participants for engaging and this good Q&A session and extending it up to, you say, a quarter to 2 hours. I will definitely be thankful to all of you. You stayed up to this time and showed all your interest to the webinar. Hope this session or add value to your knowledge and lab atmosphere. We shall keep you updated on our upcoming webinar covering additional technologies and topics such as biosafety, quality control, and shall share the information soon on that. We have recorded the webinar and I will be sharing the recording link to you maybe early next week. Until then, be healthy and safe. Wish you all the very best and a good weekend to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.